You've probably heard the word monopoly thrown around a lot, right? And no, I'm not talking about the board game. I'm talking about a massive economic force that, believe it or not, shapes a lot of our world. So in this explainer, we're going to break down exactly what they are, how they work, and most importantly, why it all matters to you. So here's our game plan. First up, we'll get a really clear definition of what a monopoly actually is. Then we'll look at how they build this fortress around themselves to stay on top. After that, we're going to peek inside their playbook with a little thing I call the Monopolies math. Then we'll see how these giants are regulated, and finally, we'll zoom way out to see the bigger economic picture. All right, let's dive right in. First things first, before we can get into all the juicy details about their power and influence, we need to have a rock-solid idea of what we're even talking about. So what is a monopoly? When you boil it all down, it's actually super simple. One seller has total control. I mean, imagine your town only had one single grocery store. Just one. That store gets to decide everything. The prices, what's on the shelves, you name it. There's nowhere else to go. That, right there, is the heart of a monopoly. And what's really interesting is how these characteristics all feed into each other. You've got that single seller, and they're often selling a unique product. Then you have these massive barriers to entry, which we'll talk about in a sec, that keep anyone else from jumping in. This combination turns them into a price maker, not a price taker. And since they don't really have to compete on price, they can focus on things like advertising to strengthen their grip. So that leads us to the big question. How? I mean, how does one company manage to keep an entire market all to itself? Well, they build a fortress. And the walls of that fortress, they're called barriers to entry. It's a great question, isn't it? If a monopoly is just raking in cash, you'd think another company would just swoop in and try to get a piece of that pie. But as you're about to see, it's really not that easy. And here's why. The walls of that fortress are high, and they come in a lot of different forms. Take economies of scale. A huge company can make stuff so cheaply that a tiny startup just can't possibly match their prices. Or think about legal barriers, like a patent that gives a drug company the exclusive right to sell a life-saving medicine for decades. And then you've got network effects. This one's huge today. Think about it. A new social media app is totally useless if none of your friends are on it. It's this powerful catch-22 that can lock out any new competition. Okay, now let's pull back the curtain and see how all this power translates into cold, hard cash. We're going to get inside the mind of a monopolist and look at the simple, powerful math that drives every single one of their decisions. It all starts with costs, right? Before you can figure out how to make a profit, you have to know exactly, and I mean exactly, what it costs you to create your product. It's the foundation for everything else. So here's basically how they think about it. You've got your fixed costs, things like rent that don't change, and you've got your variable costs, like raw materials that go up as you make more stuff. But the number that really matters is the marginal cost. Pay attention to this one. It's the cost of producing just one more item. That one little number is the key to their entire strategy. And now for the fun part, revenue. This is the money flowing in. And because a monopoly is a price maker, not a price taker, they have an incredible amount of say over this side of the equation. Just like with costs, we can break down revenue. You've got your total revenue. That's easy, just price times quantity. And average revenue. But here it is again, the superstar metric, marginal revenue. How much extra cash do you bring in by selling just one more item? So here's where it all comes together. A monopoly is constantly asking itself two very simple questions. What will one more unit cost me to make? And what will one more unit earn me? The entire goal is to find that perfect, magical balancing point between the two. And here it is. This is the secret formula, the golden rule of the monopoly. MC equals MR. They will keep making more and more product right up until the point where the cost of making that next item is exactly equal to the revenue it brings in. That's the sweet spot. That's where profit is maxed out. Okay, so a single company with that much power, it sounds a little intimidating for us as consumers, right? And, well, it can be, which is why there are systems in place to manage them. So let's talk about how society tries to tame these giants. Now, first, it's really important to know that not all monopolies are created equal. Some are actually considered good, or at least necessary. We call them natural monopolies. Think about the water pipes running to your house. It would be crazy inefficient to have 3 different companies digging up the streets to lay their own pipes. In cases like that, having one big firm is just the most logical and efficient way to do it. That's very different from a monopoly that just bought up all its competitors.
So what can you do? Well, governments have a whole toolkit. You've probably heard of antitrust laws, which can be used to break up a company that gets way too big. For a natural monopoly like the power company, they might use price regulation to put a cap on how much they can charge you. Other options include things like public ownership or just trying to make it easier for new competitors to enter the market.
All right, let's zoom out one last time. We've defined what a monopoly is, we've seen how they protect their fortress, and we've looked at how we try to regulate them. But why do we even care so much? Why does this one type of company get so much attention?
It's because monopolies hit on the three big goals of pretty much any economy. They can harm efficiency because they often produce less and charge more than they would if they had competition. They can challenge equity by concentrating a massive amount of wealth and power into just one company. And their impact on economic growth is a hot debate. Do they get lazy without competition, or does their size allow them to invest in huge innovations? Balancing these three E's is the whole game.
And that leaves us with one final thought to chew on. Every era has had its giants, from railroads in the past to software today. As we dive deeper into a world of artificial intelligence and global digital platforms, the very nature of market power is changing again. So I'll leave you with this. What do you think the monopolies of tomorrow will control? Thanks for watching.